This is a pleasure. We get to talk to the newest member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's going in the first week of August, former Arizona State Sun Devil and Kansas City Chief, Houston Oiler and Detroit Lion, Curley Culp. How you doing, Curley?
Fine. Thank you very much.
So I see you went to Arizona State. Was that your sole choice for college, or were you looking at other colleges back in the 60s?
Well, I had an opportunity to go to UCLA on a wrestling scholarship. The only catch was that it was one of those situations where if you made the team, you had a scholarship. But at Arizona State, it gave me an opportunity to do two things. One, to play football, and secondly, to wrestle, which was a real dear to me at the time.
Now, you, as a high school player and athlete, you were very good in football, but you were even better in wrestling. Was that the sport at which you really excelled?
Well, I enjoyed wrestling. Football there at my hometown, Yuma, Arizona, we had some decent years, but I think my wrestling success was probably overshadowed the football endeavors.
So who recruited you to Arizona State? Was it Frank Kush, or was it one of the assistants?
Well, Frank Kush was the head coach during that time, but a gentleman by the name of Jack Stovall was the gentleman that pursued me heavily. Him, and I guess through the support of my high school coach at the time by the guy by the name of Frank Thomas.
What was playing for Frank Kush like?
Frank was a super. Frank was a super coach. He brought in a lot of individuals and gave them opportunities to play football and also get education there at Arizona State University. I think his style of coaching probably wouldn't fit today's college coach, but he had great success at Arizona State University.
He had a lot of Hall of Famers he coached. One I know was Charlie Taylor.
Yeah, Charlie Taylor was one. Mike Haynes was one. Guy by the name of Randall McDaniel and myself, and Reggie Jackson played there. He didn't play football as much, but he started out at football and switched over to play baseball.
I have to ask you, your first name is Curley. Were your parents Three Stooges fans, or how did that name come about?
Well, I have a twin sister, and her name was Shirley. She was born about 15 minutes before me. And as the story goes, I was told by my sister Lucille, said that she came up with the rhyme between Shirley and Curly. Yeah, I tell you, I had to live with that. A lot of people think that Curly is a nickname. A lot of people have Curly as a nickname, but that's my given name. No middle name, just Curly.
Did you ever go up against Reggie Jackson in practice?
Reggie Jackson was a running back, and I had an opportunity to block for him as an offensive guard when I was there at Arizona State my freshman year.
So 1 year of football cured Reggie of playing football, and he said, I'll stick to the baseball diamond. Is that how it went?
Well, I don't think that's quite true. I think there was a situation there at Arizona State University where Reggie had an opportunity to go through a hamburger drill, and I think that hamburger drill kind of just made up his mind on which sport he wanted to pursue at the time.
So the hamburger drill is he would have been the meat in between the two buns?
I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Now, your wrestling success continued at Arizona State, winning national championships. I think you also walked away with an award for having the most falls in the quickest amount of time. You pinned, what, 3 of your 4 opponents?
Yeah, at the national. Yeah, at State. Yeah, my junior year. Yeah, it's called the Gagarin Award. Yes, that was quite an accomplishment. It was one of those situations where I had a head coach by the name of Ted Bradyhoff for wrestling, and I must say that I was in the best shape I've ever been in my life going into the nationals. And the first round, I wrestled this gentleman from Lehigh, and I beat him 15-5. And then the rest of my opponents, I took them to the mat and pinned them all. And then in the championship round, a guy by the name of Nick Carolla from Adams State, I pinned him in 51 seconds. And so it was a great feat on my part to be a part of a team. I think that's the first time Arizona State University ranked so highly in the national, so it was a great deal.
Did you do a lot of weightlifting when you were training for wrestling, or was it basically just sheer strength?
I think it was probably more sheer strength than anything, although we did have a weight program there at Arizona State, but it wasn't really extensive. We had a guy by the name of John Cole, kind of helped out with athletics, but it wasn't the kind of weight training that they have nowadays in colleges and universities.
How did Iowa or Iowa State not come after you for wrestling? That, you know.
Well, you know, small town, Yuma, Arizona. You know, I won state champion a couple of years in a row there at Yuma High School. But like I say, the only institution that sought me was the USC and UCLA. So it was just one of those things.
But did you have any for football?
Pardon me?
But UCLA didn't want you for football?
No, it was wrestling.
Did you think about trying out for the '68 Olympics, though, in wrestling?
Well, my junior year, because I was won the nationals, and I think the following year, my senior year, I had an opportunity to compete for the Olympics. In fact, I made the Olympic squad. I was number 2 heavyweight in the country at the time, a guy by the name of Larry Kristoff, and myself. He was number 1, I was number 2. And I went to the trials. I was in Lincoln, Nebraska at the time. And it was one of those situations where they said if you win 2 out of the 3 matches, the one that they won the 2 matches would have an opportunity to pick which way you wanted to be, the freestyle or Greco. Freestyle wrestling is where you use your legs and your upper body. And that was my choice, although the powers that be wanted me to go Greco. And I wrestled this guy the first round, and I thought I had pinned him, and a couple of judges said he was pinned, and after I relaxed a bit, and he rolled me a couple of times, so the outcome of the match was a little differently than I thought it should have been, so I decided to pursue football instead of wrestling at the time.
Must have been the German scoring system.
Well, it was, I don't know. It's now I kind of laugh at it a little bit, but at the time I was pretty ticked off about it.
I would think so. Now, is the story true that in practice you broke the helmets of 3 of your teammates?
That's what they say. I was.
Or was it more?
Huh?
Or was it more than that?
You know, my memory back in those days kind of fades a little bit with age, but I had an opportunity to participate in a prostate cancer golf tournament in Arizona recently, and I asked that question to one of my coaches at the time, Larry Quintera. And him and Frank Kush was there at the table, and we were visiting about those days. And so I asked him point blank that it actually happened. He said, yeah, he did. So he verified it for me. So I guess it's true.
Was Frank Kush that much of a disciplinarian?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's another way to just say he was a hard ass, right?
Well, he got things done. He was a winning coach, and some of his tactics today probably wouldn't fit in, but like I said earlier, but he was a great coach and did a lot of good for a lot of athletes there at Arizona State University.
Now, at Arizona State, you were also voted in 1967 the boy with the best smile. True?
Yeah, isn't that something?
Did that come with a plaque or a trophy or anything?
No, it was just, I guess because of my junior year and I won the Nationals, I guess everybody kind of knew who I was, and so they had a picture of me and had a little jar that you put money in, and whoever ended up collecting the most money would get the award. So I won the award. I think a lot of my teammates came and dropped a nickel or dime in every now and then, so one of those kind of deals. But yeah, it was a great thing that the student body, gave me that kind of recognition.
When you got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, did you think to yourself, you know what, maybe I should go and become a professional wrestler rather than go into professional football?
Well, I was drafted by Denver. I was their first pick. They didn't have a first-round pick, so I was drafted by Denver. And the college scouts at the time, felt that I was better suited for offense, I guess mainly because of my stature, my size, my height primarily, I guess, because they just felt that I was too short to play D-line. And I had an opportunity to participate in the college all-star game there in Chicago. So I was a little late getting to training camp there in Denver, And Lou Saban was the coach, and like the college scouts, he wanted me to participate in offense, and I did that. I didn't like it, but I did it because that's what he wanted me to do, and he gave me an opportunity to do both, offense and defense. And then it just didn't work out there. I had one game from preseason. I thought I graded out. Well, I did grade out better than anybody else on the D line, but the following week I was out of there. He traded me to Kansas City. And the thing about Kansas City, Hank Stram, there at Arizona State, he came down for one of those athletic events, and he spoke to the athletes at the event and said to me afterwards that if he ever had an opportunity to pick me up, he would. He didn't draft me, but he had an opportunity to pick me out of from Denver when Lou Saban decided to let me go. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the '68 NFL draft, and Kansas City's picking 22nd, and they take George Taney, an offensive guard from Texas El Paso, who, I never heard of.
Yeah, George Taney was George Taney, and I think that same class was maybe Bob Stein was in. Maybe he came the following year, but
they also they got Mo Mormon at 19, an offensive guard.
Yeah, Mo Mormon. That's the guy that I went against every day in practice. Yeah, Mo Mormon. Yeah.
Who was your coach for the college All-Star game? Was it still Otto Graham, or was there someone else in '68?
It was I think it was Norm Van Brockelen. That was a 1968 college All-Star game. If my memory serves correctly, it was Norm Van Brockelen, yes. Yeah.
So you get to Chiefs training camp. How different was that from the Broncos?
It was structured a little differently. I think the organization was kind of different in the sense that you had veteran ball players there, so things were done a little differently. They had a weight training program, a guy by the name of Alvin Roy, I believe his name was, that had everybody lifted weights regardless of what position you played. You had to lift weights. And then we had a big jacuzzi there for the players, especially when we moved over to Arrowhead in 1972. And in that building they had a racquetball court. And I tell you, everybody was kind of fascinated about the racquetball, and I started playing racquetball for the first time. I truly enjoyed it because I think the quickness in playing the game allowed me to maybe hone in on some of the things that might be productive on the football field.
The '68 Chiefs defense was something else, though. He gave up, 170 points, which was an AFL record, and they said it's one of the finest defenses ever assembled.
I tell you, it was a great bunch of men. I mean, you had Jerry Mays on one side and Aaron Brown on the other side at ends, and then you had me and Buchanan in the middle, and then there's Willie Lanier, Bobby Bell, Jim Lynch. We had a great bunch. Johnny Robinson, Emmett Thomas. So Jim Marcel is a guy that I roomed with a lot because I think we started the first year together there. So it was a great fit with the blend between, young ball players and also veteran ball. It was a good kind of. I mean, how would you say it was one of those teams where you wanted to be on because it was just a good chemistry, and Hank Stram was such a great coach. He's very innovative in a lot of things he tried to do as well.
How was he at dealing individually with the players?
Who, Hank Stram?
Yes.
It was okay. I mean, I don't think
or did he leave that to the position coaches mostly?
Well, probably the latter, because Tom Pratt was the defensive line coach, and most of the time my interactions was with Tom Pratt. If there was a situation on the team that Tom Pratt thought that Hank Stram should come involved with, he would do that. He held two roles, one as a head coach and also one that dealt with players' contracts. I thought that was kind of conflict of interest somewhat, but he did that. But overall, it was work for the Chiefs.
And then all of a sudden, after a couple seasons, you find yourself playing in Super Bowl IV against Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
For the people who weren't around then, can you explain what the Super Bowl was like compared to what it has become?
Well, that was in 1968. The fanfare, all the excitement, the entertainment portion of it wasn't as massive as it was today. You know, today it's really theater in the larger sense of the word. But then, you know, you was just, you know, you go out and you play the game, and we had a good time doing it. But you know, things evolve, things change, and it's I think the commercials and naturally the kind of revenue that's generated from the event has changed quite substantially.
What I don't get is how did the Chiefs end up letting you go to Houston? I mean, you were the prime of your career, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 28 years old, yes, and I stayed in Kansas City 6.5 years and 6.5 years in Houston. It was one of those situations where that particular off season was, I think I was ending my 6th year, or probably in my 6th year of my contract, and that's when the World Football League started up, and I was having some difficulty getting things ironed out with Hank, so I decided to go on and pursue that possibility of playing with the World Football League, and I signed a contract with the California Suns at the time, and so I was just, at 1974 NFL season, I was just basically playing out that year with all expectations of playing with the World Football League the following year. And so at the middle of the season, we had a little disagreement of sorts, and so Hank's family decided to let me go.
But you never made it to the World Football League.
No, well, the World Football, their first year was 74, and that, you know, it just dissolved, and so I stayed in and worked things out in Houston and stayed in Houston for that period of time, from the middle of 74 to 1980 or 1981 when I finished up in Detroit.
And you go to Houston, and the defensive coordinator for Sid Gilman is Bum Phillips. What?
Yeah, Bum.
What was Bum like?
Well, Bum, yeah, quite different than a Hank Stram, of course, or even a Tom Pratt, you know. But Bum, I think Bum was with Sid in San Diego, so Bum came over to Houston when Sid came, and Bum was a player's coach in a lot of respects. You know, he was a great guy. You know, he was really hands-on and let people do their own thing, so to speak.
Because Sid Gilman was basically running the offense, and so did he leave Bum Phillips strictly to run the defense?
Well, Bum was a defensive line coach. I don't know who was the defensive coordinator at the time. It's probably someone there. I just don't recall it at this point. But I knew Bum was a defensive line coach, and the following year became the head coach. And then Eddie Bowles became the defensive coordinator. And I believe his son Wade Phillips became the defensive line coach, if I'm not mistaken.
Now, in Super Bowl IV, when they had you play over Nick Tingelhoff with Viking Center, that's sort of the game that is credited of inventing the 3-4 defense.
Uh-huh.
Did you like being that nose tackle guy and being able to take a free shot at the center at every play?
Yeah, well, you know, Kansas City, we had that triple stack, and we had two defenses primarily, triple stack and under. And the triple stack was one in which the defensive line would slide to the strength of the formation. And under defense, we would slide away from the strength. But there in the Super Bowl, I think oftentimes I don't know if I was assigned for the center all the time, or just so happened to be over the center because of the fact of the strength of the formation offensively. But you know, I think a lot of people say that was kind of the start of it all. But I think it was more situational than anything else. But it was a definite mismatch, the D-line against an offensive center, because the main responsibility of a center is to hike the ball. He has to hike the ball before he does anything else. And so I'm engaging him probably at the same time he's hiking the ball. So it's an advantage to the defensive lineman in those kind of circumstances. Although, you know, you have a situation where you got the guards coming down on you too. So it's interesting, to say the least.
Did anyone talk more in the Kansas City Chiefs team than Bobby Bell? He seemed like that he was basically the talk of the one, and Willie Lanier was more like the structured, quiet leader.
I guess. We all had our say, but I think thinking back, probably Bobby did do a little talking. Really called the plays inside the huddle. I had a lot of interaction with Bobby because when I played defensive left tackle, we would always, have stunts that we had to perform, and he'd check off or give me a different assignment right before the snap of the ball. So, yeah, he was he was communicating with me, and also I think Emmett Thomas out there at the cornerback. So, yeah. When you have a veteran team like that, we always, everybody talk, And
anybody listen?
Evidently, we won some games, so somebody had to do it, right?
Bobby Bell insists to this day in that Super Bowl with Fred Williamson, he insists that Fred didn't get hurt, that his feelings were hurt, and that's why he pulled himself out of the game.
Oh, yeah, I tell you. Yeah, Bobby, he can talk a mile a minute, man, I tell you. Great guy. In fact, I was visiting with him the other day about a few things.
You go to the Oilers, and all of a sudden, 75, they have their first winning season in 8 years, and you're named the Defensive Player of the Year, first team All-Pro.
Yeah.
A simple transition to Houston?
You say a simple?
Yeah. Nothing simple, right?
Simple when I'm playing defensive left tackle primarily in Kansas City, and with occasional sometimes I get on the nose because of the shift of the formation, and then when I go down to Houston, I'm stuck right there over the center, so you don't have much movement. You're just right there and kind of an apex of the action. You can't relax. You're always involved in what's going on the football field. So.
And you go from that nice stadium at Kansas City to that Astrodome, which that playing surface was not the greatest.
Yeah, that's true. That Astrodome surface was quite unique in the sense that the footing, the foundation wasn't really suitable to football.
So it hurt your quickness then?
What, the AstroTurf?
Yeah.
No, the AstroTurf doesn't hurt. I mean, I think as far as quickness and moving around in the game is probably a lot easier on AstroTurf than it is on grass, although grass gives you a little cushion. AstroTurf, you have those ripples, you have those tears and things like that. You guys get, ripped up ankles and knees and all that kind of thing. But it was a hard surface. Sometimes it felt like you were just playing on concrete. It was so hard.
But you had Elvin Bethea next to you, which probably helped you basically get some pass rush.
Yeah, Elvin Bethea's a great one. I mean, he was out there playing right in, and then we had guys like Teddy Washington. Raul Bazile came in. I think it was 76. He came in, and he helped out. And you have a guy inside by the name of Greg Bingham and Steve Kiner, and so we had a good bunch of individuals. Not the same talent that was at Kansas City, but we played well. We had good chemistry.
Can you tell us about the touchdown you scored?
I guess that was in Kansas. No, take that back. That was in San Diego. San Diego. It was quite interesting. I picked up the ball, and I was just rumbling down the field, and Elvin yelled at me. I guess I was going the wrong direction. And he said, "You're going the wrong way." So, and I turned around and stumbled into the end zone. So, but I tell you, the first one and the last one in 14 years in professional football is quite neat, to say the least.
What is it with these defensive linemen going the wrong way?
But I don't know. You know, when you're down there eating all that grass and you pop up, man, you just start running, Yeah.
You could have been a running back with those skills, right?
Yeah, right. When I was in high school, I was a running back for a day. We had a guy by the name of Comet. I think his first name was Larry Comet, and he got hurt, and so my high school coach I talked about Frank Thomas, decided that he wanted me to play a little fullback because I had good size. But the only thing is, I had good upper body and all that, but that's all the guys had to do is hit me around my ankles, man. I just tumbled right down, So, yeah, but it was kind of neat can the mail a little bit.
Jim Lotto said you're the strongest guy he ever played against. Was he your toughest opponent?
Well, there are a lot of tough offensive linemen in the league during that era, and it's great that Otto would say that about me. I took pride in trying to keep myself physically fit to play the game. You know, when I got, like I said, in Kansas City, we had the weight training, and then when I shifted to Houston, me and a guy by the name of James Young was, we and him kind of worked out extensively in the off season, trying to stay strong, and because we knew that was helpful when you're dealing with those offensive linemen, you know.
How gratifying was it, you know, after Houston released you, to still be able to play at an NFL level with Detroit?
Well, yeah, I was 28 years old, so I still had a lot of football left in me. So it's always good to have an opportunity to still play the game and somebody still wants your talents. So from that perspective, it was quite interesting, I guess.
Did you have to go up against Earl Campbell in practice, or did Bum not let the first teams go against each other?
Yeah, we had soft practices. Oftentimes he was in the backfield running the football when they were doing their thing, and oftentimes the number one offense does not get, you know, you don't get matched up with the number one defense that often, but occasionally, you know, it happens. So yes.
How do you tackle a guy with thighs that big?
You try to stay out of the way.
Let the linebackers worry about that.
A powerful runner. You know, Earl's a powerful runner, you know.
Yeah.
And so he reminds me a lot of the guy that ran hard like that. What's that guy's name from Miami? Larry Zonka, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But Earl had more speed than Zonka. Zonka was sort of like a bulldozer.
Right. But they're still powerful runners, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was the best player, you think, in the NFL when you were playing?
The best?
Yes.
I mean, there are a lot of great players, you know. The best, you know, there are best players at its positions. You're talking about, I don't know what criteria you use when you say the word best. I mean,
in Chicago, everybody says Walter Payton.
Yeah, well, you're talking about running backs on a team in an era. You know, there's a lot of good. You know, back in the day, there's, you know, guys like, you know, Jim Brown. They talk about a heck of a runner. Sweetness. Walter Payton was good. Earl Campbell was good. Chuck Muncher was decent. You had a guy named, what's his name, Dickerson?
Dickerson, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, so you go on and on. A guy that played with me in Kansas City by the name of Mike Garrett was a great running back. And Ed Portulac, you know, so Wendell Hayes in his own way. So there's a lot of great, you know, individuals that played the game. That's why they're called professionals, I guess. Yeah.
What was it like finding out you've made the Hall of Fame after all this time?
Well, it's very humbling, and I'm just so honored and so blessed to be a part of the next group going in. It's a great group of men, you know, Bill Parcells, Ogden, and Warren Sapp, and Chris Carter, you know, so Larry Allen. I mean, it's just a great bunch of guys, so I'm very pleased.
Who's going to be your presenter?
My son, my youngest son, is going to present me. That's where it stands today, and he's going to do a great job. And I'm looking forward for him to. He hasn't. I think he's still working on the speech, but yeah, he'll be there to represent.
So do you get to look at the speech beforehand, or does it?
No, he'll speak to my speech. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'd probably look at it, I guess, if he wants me to.
Did you have a favorite coach you played for?
Let me see. That's a good question. You know, there's so many great coaches out there. You know, Lou Saban's a good coach. We just didn't get along, but he was a great coach. Hank Stram was a super coach. Bum Phillips was a great coach. I mean, they're all good coaches. They just do things a little differently. You know, but I don't know. The greatest coach that I've been involved with, probably, well, Hank Stram, probably because of the fact that they, you know, teams with 2 Super Bowls, you know, first Super Bowl and the 4th Super Bowl. But with Bum, you know, we got to the championship game with Pittsburgh 2 years in a row, so they both accomplished. So I guess they'll be right there together.
Did you have a favorite quarterback to sack? That you just like shutting them up, man.
Any other quarterback is great to sack. A quarterback, that's obviously, you know. He can bring any one of them down. That's a great feeling, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, when I think of you as a Kansas City Chief. What do you think of yourself as?
As an NFL ball player.
Okay.
That played with, started out with Denver, did a stint in Kansas City and Houston, and finished up in Detroit.
Did you have a favorite teammate?
Favorite teammate? Me and Buck was pretty close. Marvin Upshaw, played with him in Kansas City. We were roommates. Jim Marcellus, he was my roommate on the road. And in Houston, since I was kind of like, I didn't really have a roommate per se. We kind of, the Veterans Gate had their own rooms, but I think probably maybe James Young, possibly, Elvin Bethea, Kenny Kennard, the guy that kind of came in and helped me out. We help each other out playing the nose. So those individuals.
Now, do you live in Austin, Texas now?
I do. I live in Austin, Texas. Well, actually, Pflugerville, which is kind of north of the city a little bit.
Okay. How'd you end up down there?
Well, in 1992, I came to Austin to go to school at UT, and I was accepted into the program there called a CCLP program, the Community College Leadership Program. So I started that in 92, and after that was completed, or near completion, I decided to stay here in Austin.
I can't blame you. It's a wonderful town.
Yeah, it is. In fact, Austin's probably the 11th largest city in the United States now. They say anywhere from 20 to 25 to 30,000 people coming in here every year. So the only problem is the traffic is a little more than a notion, but I guess that goes with progress. You know, you got people coming in, you're going to have traffic problems. You're
not a Cowboys fan now, though.
What's that?
You're not a Dallas Cowboys fan, are you?
What's that? As far as Texas teams go, professionally, I would probably be more of a Texan fan than a Cowboy fan.
I just miss the Oilers, though. I love that logo. I love that team. I just wish they kept the name.
Yeah. Well, they're down in Tennessee with a different name. It's a shame, but that's what things